The soldier's name was Mark, a man trained for many years in the art of war and peacekeeping. He had been part of a special mission sent to explore distant planets and make contact with alien civilizations. The goal was to build friendships and learn about new worlds. Mark had seen strange places and strange creatures before, but nothing could prepare him for what happened next. On this mission, Mark and his team arrived at a planet called Zalora. It was a place filled with towering, blue forests and glowing plants. The air smelled fresh but strange. The people of Zalora were very different from humans. They were tall, graceful, and their society was led by women who made all important decisions. The soldiers knew they had to be careful, respectful, and follow the rules of this alien culture. Mark was part of the group that met the leaders of Zalora. The meeting was peaceful at first. The Zalorans spoke slowly and used signs as well as words. They explained their laws and customs. Everything seemed calm. But just as the talks were ending, something unexpected happened. A young Zaloran woman accused Mark of breaking a serious rule. She said he had entered a sacred area without permission. Mark was confused because he did not know this place was off limits. Before he could explain, Zaloran guards arrived and took him away. The other humans tried to intervene, but the Zalorans insisted that their laws must be followed. Mark was separated from his team and brought to a tall building made of shining crystal. Inside, he was placed in a small room with soft, light and smooth walls. The air was quiet but tense. He felt like he was in a strange dream. After some time, Mark was led to a large chamber. There, a group of women sat on raised seats arranged in a circle. They wore flowing clothes of silver and blue, and their eyes were sharp and serious. This was the female tribunal, the highest authority on Zalora. They looked at Mark with no anger, but with great expectation. One of the women, the leader of the tribunal, spoke in a calm but firm voice. "You have broken the laws of our people by entering the sacred grove without permission," she said. "Our laws are clear. For this offense, you must take part in the mating ritual with our females. This ritual is a tradition that binds our people and brings peace between our clans. It is not punishment alone, but a way to heal and restore honor." Mark did not understand. He tried to say he did not mean to offend or cause harm. But the tribunal's decision was final. They explained that the ritual was very important to their society. It was a ceremony where chosen females came together with a partner to share energy, trust, and loyalty. This practice kept their communities strong and united. To refuse the ritual was to dishonor the entire society. Mark felt a mixture of fear and confusion. He was a soldier trained to fight and survive. But this was something different, something he could not prepare for. The women of the tribunal saw his hesitation and gave him time to think. They told him that while the ritual might seem strange, it was peaceful and sacred. They promised he would be treated with respect. During this time, Mark remembered his training about respecting alien cultures. He realized that he had to try to understand their ways, even if they were very different from his own. The tribunal explained that the ritual was not just about mating in the human sense. It was about forming a bond that connected people deeply. The females who took part were leaders, healers, and protectors of their clans. Mark's thoughts raced. He wondered how his own people would react if they knew about this ritual. Would they see it as strange or shameful? Would they try to save him or accept that he must follow the alien laws? His team was still outside, trying to negotiate his release, but the Zalorans were firm. Their laws were older than any human treaty, and they could not be broken. As Mark sat quietly, he noticed the calm strength of the tribunal members. They were not cruel or harsh. Instead, they seemed proud of their culture and confident in their traditions. This gave Mark a small feeling of hope. Maybe he could learn from them. Maybe this experience would change him. The tribunal allowed Mark to rest for a while before the next step. He was given food that looked and tasted strange, but it gave him energy. He was also given clothing that was light and comfortable. The women told him that the ritual would involve preparation and that he would meet the females who would take part with him. Mark spent the night thinking about everything he had seen and heard. The fear slowly changed to curiosity. He wanted to understand why this ritual was so important and how it could help keep peace on this alien world. He wondered what the females he would meet would be like. Would they be kind? Would they understand his fears? The next morning, Mark was brought back before the tribunal. The leader spoke again, explaining that his participation was necessary not just for his own future, but for the future of peace between humans and Zalorans. This ritual was a chance for both species to show trust and cooperation. It was a responsibility he could not refuse. Mark nodded slowly. He did not know what lay ahead, but he was determined to face it with courage. He understood that sometimes being a soldier was not just about fighting with weapons, but about fighting with understanding and respect. He accepted that this strange ritual was now a part of his mission. With that, the tribunal ended the session. Mark was escorted to a different part of the city where he would prepare for the ritual. The Zaloran guards were respectful and the atmosphere was calm. Though his heart was still heavy with questions, Mark felt a new sense of purpose. He would do his best to honor the laws of this alien world and find a way to return home with knowledge and peace. After the tribunal's decision, Mark was moved to a new place within the Zaloran city. This place was called the House of Preparation. It was a large building filled with soft lights and gentle sounds that seemed to calm his nerves. The walls were covered with paintings of the planet's history and symbols of peace. Though it was strange and unfamiliar, Mark found some comfort in the peaceful atmosphere. Mark was given a small room with a bed and a window that looked out over a glowing forest. The Zalorans explained that he would stay here for several days as he learned about their culture and prepared for the ritual. At first, Mark felt isolated and lonely. He missed his home, his friends, and the familiar ways of Earth. But slowly, he began to open his mind to the world around him. Each day, women from the Zaloran society came to visit Mark. These were not just ordinary women, but respected members of their clans. Some were leaders, others were teachers, and many were skilled in the ancient traditions of their people. They spoke to him gently and patiently, helping him understand what the ritual meant and why it was so important. Mark learned that the ritual was a sacred ceremony that connected the physical and spiritual worlds of Zalora. It was a way for the females to share their strength and wisdom with a partner, creating bonds that lasted for life. The ritual was a symbol of trust and unity, bringing together different clans and families to live in harmony. The women showed Mark drawings and told stories about how the ritual had saved their society during times of war and hardship. They explained that the males in their society did not hold power like on Earth. Instead, the females were the protectors and leaders. This was a surprise to Mark, but he listened carefully and tried to understand. One of the women, named Lyra, became a guide and friend to Mark. She was kind and patient, and she answered many of his questions. Lyra told him about her own experiences with the ritual and how it had changed her life. She shared stories of courage, love, and hope. Mark felt grateful for her kindness and began to trust her. Lyra also helped Mark prepare physically for the ritual. The process was not about force or control, but about openness and respect. They practiced calming exercises, breathing techniques, and ways to communicate without words. Mark was surprised to find that these lessons helped him relax and feel more connected to the Zaloran people. As the days passed, Mark started to understand more about the female-led society. The women were strong but gentle, wise but humble. Their laws and customs were different from Earth's, but they had their own beauty and logic. Mark realized that respecting these differences was important if he wanted to survive and return home. At the same time, Mark struggled with his own feelings. He missed his family and wondered what they thought of him now. Was he a prisoner or a guest? Would his people accept what was happening to him? These questions filled his mind, but he knew he had little choice. He had to face the ritual with courage and respect. The Zaloran women also prepared Mark for the social side of the ritual. He would meet several females from different clans, each with her own personality and story. The goal was not just to follow rules, but to build connections and trust. Mark thought about how strange this was compared to anything he had known on Earth. Despite his fears, Mark found moments of joy. He enjoyed the peaceful walks in the glowing forests, the quiet conversations with Lyra, and the gentle music that filled the house of preparation. These small things helped him remember that life could be beautiful, even in the most difficult times. Meanwhile, outside the city, the other human soldiers worked hard to find a way to free Mark. They contacted their leaders and sent messages to Earth, explaining the situation. Some wanted to force the Zaloran government to release him. Others hoped for a peaceful solution. But the Zaloran leaders were firm. Their laws were clear, and they wanted Mark to complete the ritual. Mark did not know all these details, but he felt the weight of the moment. He understood that he was a symbol now, not just a soldier, but a bridge between two very different worlds. This gave him a new sense of responsibility. He wanted to show respect for the Zaloran culture and honor his own people at the same time. One day, Lyra brought Mark to meet the first group of females he would encounter during the ritual. They were dressed in beautiful robes that shimmered like the stars. Each woman had a calm but strong presence. Mark bowed politely and introduced himself. The women smiled gently, welcoming him with warmth and kindness. Mark was surprised to find that despite the differences, he could feel a connection with these women. They were curious about him, and he was curious about them. This exchange of curiosity became the first step toward building trust. As the preparation days moved on, Mark learned more about Zaloran customs. He was taught songs that told stories of peace, dances that expressed unity, and symbols that represented their clans. Everything was done with care and respect. Mark realized that this ritual was not about punishment, but about healing and understanding. Even though Mark's heart still carried fear, he started to feel hope. Hope that by completing the ritual, he could help build a better future between humans and Zalorans. Hope that he could return home with stories of friendship instead of war. At night, Mark often looked out the window at the glowing forest. The lights flickered gently like stars close to the ground. He thought about the journey ahead and the changes it might bring. He promised himself to face the ritual with an open heart and mind. The days of preparation slowly came to an end. Mark was no longer the frightened soldier who had been taken from his team. He was someone learning to live in a new world, someone trying to understand a culture far beyond his own. The ritual was near, and with it, a new chapter of his life would begin. Mark knew it would not be easy. There would be challenges and unknowns. But he felt ready to take part in the ritual that meant so much to the Zaloran people, ready to find his place between two worlds, and most of all, ready to learn what it truly meant to connect with others, even when they seemed very different. The days passed quickly as Mark prepared for the ritual. Each morning, he woke with a mixture of nervousness and determination. He knew that soon he would meet the females chosen by the tribunal to take part in this ancient ceremony. Though the idea still felt strange and difficult to understand, Mark trusted the women who guided him and wanted to do his best. The house of preparation became both his home and his school. Each day, more women came to meet him. They spoke softly, explaining their roles and the importance of the ritual. Mark learned that these women were not just part of a ceremony, but were leaders, healers, and wise elders who carried the hopes of their clans. Their strength and grace surprised him. Mark was introduced to three main women who would be part of the ritual with him. The first was named Sira. She was tall and calm, with eyes that seemed to look deep into his soul. Sira was a leader among her people and known for her wisdom and kindness. The second was Nala, younger and full of energy, who laughed easily and had a bright, curious spirit. The third was Marine, older and serious, a respected healer who had helped many during times of crisis. Meeting these women was both exciting and challenging for Mark. He felt unsure how to act or what to say. The customs were so different from anything he had known, but the women treated him with respect and patience. They explained that the ritual was about more than just actions. It was about trust, connection, and understanding. Mark spent hours talking with each woman, learning about their lives, dreams, and fears. Sira told him stories of the past when their society had faced danger and how the ritual had brought peace. Nala shared her hopes for the future and her belief that the humans and Zalorans could live in friendship. Marine spoke about healing, not only of the body but of the heart and mind. As Mark listened, he began to see the ritual in a new light. It was not punishment, but a chance for people to come together, share their strengths, and build trust. He realized that the females were not forcing him into anything but inviting him to join their community in a special way. Still, Mark's mind often returned to his own people. He wondered how his commanders and fellow soldiers felt about his situation. He worried if they thought he was weak or foolish. But deep inside, Mark knew he was doing something important. He was walking a path that few humans had ever faced. During this time, the Zaloran guides helped Mark prepare his body and mind. They taught him special breathing exercises to calm his nerves. They showed him movements and gestures that expressed respect and openness. Mark practiced these carefully, wanting to honor their customs and show his willingness to participate. One day, while walking in the glowing forest near the House of Preparation, Mark found a quiet spot to think. The light from the plants shimmered softly, and the air was filled with a peaceful silence. Mark realized how much he had changed since arriving on Zalora. His fear had not disappeared, but it had softened into something like hope. Mark also noticed how the three women began to include him more in their daily lives. They shared meals, stories, and moments of laughter. Mark discovered that despite their differences, they shared many feelings: joy, sadness, hope, and courage. This helped him feel less alone. As the ritual day grew closer, Mark's training intensified. The women explained that the ceremony would require patience and respect. It was not about force, but about mutual acceptance. Mark learned how to communicate without words, using touch and eye contact to show his feelings. At the same time, Mark's human team outside continued their efforts. They sent messages, tried to negotiate, and hoped for a peaceful solution. But the Zaloran leaders remained firm in their decision. The ritual was part of their law and culture, and Mark's participation was necessary. Mark understood that his role was now greater than himself. He was a bridge between two worlds, carrying the hopes of peace and understanding. This responsibility was heavy, but Mark was determined to meet it with courage. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a soft purple, Mark sat with Sira, Nala, and Marine. They talked about the future, not only of the ritual but of the friendship between humans and Zalorans. The women expressed their hope that Mark's participation would open new doors for both species. Mark felt a deep respect for these women. They were not just part of a ritual, but leaders who worked for the good of their people. Their strength inspired him. The night before the ceremony, Mark found it hard to sleep. His mind was full of questions and feelings. He thought about the journey ahead and the unknown challenges. But he also felt a quiet confidence. He had learned so much, and he was ready to face whatever came next. As dawn broke, Mark rose early. The city was waking, and the soft light filled the sky. The moment he had been preparing for was almost here. Mark knew the ritual would be a turning point, not just for him, but for the future between humans and Zalorans. He was no longer just a soldier. He was part of something bigger, a story of trust, respect, and hope. The day of the ritual arrived with a calm sky and gentle light. Mark woke early, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. He had prepared for this moment in many ways, but now that it was here, the reality felt much deeper than he had imagined. He knew this ritual was important not only for the Zalorans, but for himself as well. Mark dressed in the special clothing given to him by the Zaloran women. The fabric was soft and light, shimmering slightly in the morning sun. It made him feel strange but also honored. The clothing was a symbol of his acceptance into their culture, and he understood its meaning. He was led from the house of preparation to a large hall filled with light. The hall was unlike anything Mark had seen before. It was round, with walls made of a glowing crystal that changed colors softly. The air was filled with a quiet music that made the moment feel sacred. Waiting inside were the three women who had become part of Mark's journey, Sira, Nala, and Marine. They stood with calm strength, welcoming him with gentle smiles. Around them were other Zalorans, all dressed in their ceremonial robes, watching quietly with respect. The ritual began with a series of slow, graceful movements. Sira led the group in a dance that told the story of their people's past struggles and victories. Mark watched carefully, trying to understand the meaning behind each gesture. The dance was beautiful and full of emotion. After the dance, the ritual moved to a time of sharing. Mark was invited to sit between the three women. They began to speak softly, their voices blending with the music and the light around them. The words were not like those on Earth. They were filled with feelings and intentions. Mark reached out and took Sira's hand first. The touch was gentle and warm. He felt a connection he had never experienced before. It was not about physical closeness alone, but about trust and respect. Sira's eyes told him that this was a moment of honesty and openness. Next, Nala joined his side. Her energy was bright and lively, and she smiled with kindness. Mark felt his nervousness lessen as Nala's laughter and warmth filled the space. Together, they shared silent moments, communicating with eyes and small gestures. Finally, Marine came closer. Her presence was calm and steady, like a deep river. She placed her hand on Mark's shoulder, giving him strength. Marine's touch reminded him that this ritual was not only about connection, but also about healing and peace. The ceremony continued with the exchange of gifts. The women gave Mark small tokens of their culture, beautiful flowers that glowed softly, delicate fabrics, and symbols of their clans. Mark offered a small piece of his own world in return, a simple charm from Earth that symbolized hope and friendship. As the ritual moved forward, Mark began to understand its true meaning. It was a moment to show acceptance of differences, to create bonds that went beyond words. The ceremony was a promise to care for each other and work together for a peaceful future. The Zalorans watched carefully, sensing Mark's sincerity. The Tribunal had chosen this ritual not to punish, but to build bridges. Mark's openness and respect were clear signs that he honored their culture and traditions. Throughout the ceremony, Mark felt his fears slowly fade. Instead of feeling trapped or alone, he experienced a sense of belonging. The ritual connected him to the Zalorans in a way he had never expected. He realized that sometimes true strength comes from opening one's heart to new experiences. At the end of the ceremony, the women embraced Mark gently. Their smiles were full of pride and kindness. The tribunal members stepped forward and declared that Mark had completed the ritual with honor. He was now part of their community in a special way. Mark felt a deep gratitude. Though he had come from a world very different from Zalora, he had found respect, friendship, and understanding. The ritual had not been easy, but it had changed him. After the ceremony, Mark spent time talking with the women and other Zalorans. They shared stories, hopes, and dreams for the future. Mark promised to carry their message back to Earth, that peace and friendship between their peoples were possible. As the sun set on Zalora, Mark looked out at the glowing forests once more. The stars above seemed brighter than ever. He knew his journey was far from over, but this day marked a new beginning, a bridge between worlds built on trust and respect. After completing the ritual, Mark felt a calmness he had never known before. The experience had changed him deeply. What had started as fear and confusion turned into understanding and respect. Now, as he prepared to leave Zalora, he knew that his life would never be the same. The Zaloran women who had guided him, Sira, Nala, and Marine, continued to support him as he got ready to return to his own people. They explained that Mark now carried a special bond with their society. This bond was not only a sign of respect, but a promise of peace between their worlds. They trusted him to share their message of friendship. Mark took time to say goodbye to the women and others he had met. Each farewell was filled with warmth and hope. He promised to remember the lessons he learned and to carry the spirit of Zalora with him wherever he went. Before his departure, the tribunal invited Mark once more. They expressed their appreciation for his courage and willingness to embrace their culture. They told him that through the ritual, he had become a symbol of unity, showing that even great differences could be bridged by respect and kindness. Mark felt honored but also aware of the responsibility he now carried. He thought about his family, his friends, and the people on Earth. How would they understand what he had experienced? How would he explain the alien customs, the ritual, and the bonds he had formed? As Mark boarded the spaceship to return home, he looked back at Zalora one last time. The glowing forests and shimmering skies seemed to welcome him with quiet hope. He felt grateful for the chance to learn and grow on this strange planet. During the journey back, Mark reflected on everything he had seen and felt. He understood that culture was more than just rules. It was a way of life shaped by history, beliefs, and values. The female-led society of Zalora challenged many of his own ideas about power, gender, and tradition. Mark realized that true peace required more than treaties or weapons. It needed understanding and acceptance of differences. His participation in the ritual was a step toward that peace, a living example of how two very different species could find common ground. When Mark finally returned to Earth, he was greeted with relief and curiosity. His fellow soldiers and commanders listened as he shared his story. Some found it difficult to believe, while others admired his bravery. Slowly, people began to understand that Mark's experience was unique and important. Mark worked with diplomats and scientists to explain the lessons of Zalora. He spoke about respect for other cultures and the need to listen and learn before judging. His story helped open new conversations about how humans could interact with alien societies in the future. Though Mark returned to a world very different from Zalora, a part of him remained connected to the glowing forests and the women who had taught him so much. He kept the tokens they had given him, a reminder of the bonds he had formed and the promise of peace. Mark knew his life's journey was now shared between two worlds. He had become more than a soldier. He was a bridge, a symbol of hope and friendship between humans and aliens. His story was a reminder that even in the face of fear and uncertainty, kindness and respect could build a better future. In the years that followed, Mark's experience inspired many. People began to see that meeting the unknown did not always mean conflict. Sometimes it meant learning and growing together. The ritual that once seemed strange became a symbol of unity and hope. Mark often thought back to the day he stood before the female tribunal, feeling lost and alone. Now he understood that moment as the beginning of a journey toward understanding, one that showed how courage and respect could change the world.